Well, welcome to a Toast to Truth. This is where we share the emotional, mental, and financial frustration of being an entrepreneur and how to overcome it. But this week is going to be a little different. This is more of a political, I guess you can say it's a political episode, as this election kind of has had an effect on a lot of people. So, the question for this week is, how do you deal with what's just happened? I'll put it that way. I guess that's the best way to put it. So let's get into Season 3, Episode 2, the 2016 election aftermath for Black entrepreneurs. This week, I'm not going to have a special guest host. It's just going to be myself giving my perspective and opinion and observation from what I have seen take place over the 2-year election campaigns, as well as the aftermath. But I really want to focus in on the aftermath, as that is something my business actually will be able to help people kind of get through. So before we get into this week's wonderful recap of the 2016 election, let's go ahead and pop some bubbly. So my pop and bubbly moment this week is I made it through this election cycle. I made it through the election results unscathed. I'm actually very, very motivated from this particular result, and I'll explain more in today's podcast. So let's just get into it. First, I want to start with, like I stated last week, this is National Entrepreneurship Month. National Entrepreneurship Day, I believe, is November 15th. It is supposed to be, or 17th. And Women's Entrepreneurship Day is November 19th. I will have a link to the House Resolution 401, so that you can learn more about National Entrepreneurship Month and all the National Entrepreneurship Days that we will celebrate this month. So why did I bring that up? Well, I first brought it up because this is a business podcast, and I believe in economic empowerment within our community, within all communities, actually. As much as people want to rely on the government to handle and take care of a lot of things, it's really the small business owners, it's really the entrepreneurs who make the greatest impact in the community. They're the ones who are sponsoring the Little League teams. They're the ones who are giving the elderly fans in the summer when it's hot, or cutting the grass of the elderly, or fixing little things around the house, or creating bags for the homeless in the winter to kind of keep them warm, give them something to eat. If it's not for the small business owners and the entrepreneurs, then a lot of things in this country would not get done. As much as we want to say the government does it, they do not. All they do is shuffle around a lot of paperwork until it confuses so many people, then they can pass through bills that are unread by 99.9% of people. That's literally how government works. That's my observation. That's my personal opinion. Being a former school teacher, I understand that government loves paperwork because it really does confuse people. It frustrates people to the point where they no longer take the time to educate themselves on what they are actually signing or what they're actually being given as far as a new policy, a new procedure, a new system, a new way to teach something in the classroom, whatever it may be. Paperwork confuses people, and it's done on purpose. That's what government does. Now, if it's not for the small business owners and the entrepreneurs, then, like I said, a lot of things would not be done. Ever since I've started my business, Women Are Game Changers, I have made it a point to raise money for women and youth organizations, either at every stop for Fusion Tour, hosting a gala, spending a whole month shedding light on them, or donating part of my profit so that they can have conferences or they can get things that they need. I do this because I understand that if there were more opportunities for me growing up, then I would have been exposed to a lot more. And I'm just saying me personally, but I was exposed to a lot because my mother made it a mission of hers to expose her children to as much as she could. Now, I grew up in White House, Texas. At the time, population was like 2,300 people. Okay, I'm sure population is now around 3,000. Still not a lot. I mean, there are high schools in Houston probably with more students than there are people who lived in my hometown. And I remember going to D.C. when I was 16 years old for Presidential Classroom. I don't think they have this program anymore. And we got to spend a week there learning about how government works. And it was probably the most eye-opening thing for me to be involved in because I was able to meet 300 other teenagers from across the country from all different walks of life. All of us had to share our rooms at Georgetown with 3 other people. So I still remember my roommates were from Missouri, Georgia, and Harlem. You could not put 4 different people in a room, and yet we still got along. We may have come from different backgrounds, different types of living situations, rural, urban, suburban, but we all came for one reason. We wanted to learn how government works because we wanted to be part of the solution. And having that experience really opened my eyes to understanding exactly how politics works in a way. And when I was 18 years old, I remember working the election polls. I was a freshman at Tarrant County College, and the professor in my political science class said that they would give bonus points on the final if you worked the election polls. It was really his way of trying to get us to understand how the election worked in a different way. So I went. I wanted extra points. I'm an overachiever. I like my A's. We all know that. But I went, and I was the only student in my class who went. And come to find out, everybody who was working the election polls in Arlington, Texas, 2002, were like all retirees. And so I really got to learn from them, and I worked every day during the early voting, and then I worked on election day. And the bonus was $10 an hour. 18-year-old broke college student, $10 an hour was amazing. So I really got to see politics from that point of view, from that perspective of understanding what it's like to work the actual polls, the actual counting process. And I remember Tony Sanchez was running for governor against Governor Rick Perry, who was up for his first reelection. So it was just, at the time, I was a Tony Sanchez fan because I believed in the Democrat values. And so I couldn't really, campaign for Tony Sanchez because I was working the polls. So it was just quite interesting to see how the process unfolded. Fast forward to 2006 when I graduated from undergrad. I became an independent. I really started seeing things from a different perspective. I started seeing that every single situation could not be all Republican or all Democrat. Some needed a little bit more of a liberal approach. Some needed a little bit more of a conservative approach. Some issues needed a little bit more of a moderate approach. So for the last decade, I have literally been voting across party lines. I literally go through every single line, every single proposition, every single elected position that's open, and I vote one by one. So I give all of this background to say that I'm not oblivious to how politics work. I have tried to be a part of the political process in some form or fashion since I was 16 years old. So my entire adult life, I have been a part of trying to get people to understand voting. You know, it doesn't matter if you feel your vote doesn't matter. Your vote matters in local and state elections way more than it matters in the federal election. And when you do not vote because you are abstaining from voting because you don't like the choices from the presidential campaign, then you are neglecting your community. You are neglecting the streets that need to be repaired. You are neglecting the funds that need to be sent to the public school in the district you live in. You are neglecting pensions for city workers. You are neglecting, you know, fire and safety for your community. You are neglecting making sure that taxes don't rise on homeowners or business owners so that the city can operate effectively. You really have to understand that voting matters more at the local level than it does at the federal level, okay? So I really want you to understand why you should take voting as a serious issue, especially as an entrepreneur. Even though I stated at the beginning, government does not run our lives per se. We do, as entrepreneurs, do a lot more in the community than people give us credit for, that people even know that we do. But we still need the government to run so that we can do our business and we can live in a society that has some sense of order, okay? So I say all of this to say that I'm still going to run my business. This election has only motivated me to not be dependent on someone else to sign a check for me or for someone else to make a decision that's going to affect my life. I am the architect of my own destiny, and I'm going to continue to make the moves that I need to make for my business. Now, with the recent outpouring of hurt, frustration, anger that I'm seeing online, that I'm hearing from people, that me being an ESL, English as a second language teacher, for those who don't know what ESL means, I specifically teach refugees. So to hear, their angst and their hesitation, I'm seeing it all around me online, in person, everywhere. And me teaching people how to do a mental detox is needed more than ever, because a lot of people are just venting and they're, adding to their stress and their anger levels, but yet they're not able to figure out how to move past it. Doesn't mean you have to stop being angry. It just means you have to figure out how to change your frustration into fuel so that you can be part of the solution. That's the most important thing. You can be angry, pissed off, frustrated, upset, sad, disappointed, all of those negative emotions. That's okay to have. That's okay to feel. But you need to be able to channel those negative emotions into something that's going to help you be part of the solution. And so that's why I'm going to continue to do what I do, because this election has motivated me to make sure that I am part of people's healing process and also part of people's process to be part of the solution for this great problem that we have in our country with sexism, racism, homophobia, all of these things that were just, brought to the surface over the last 2 years. I do want to stress that I was disappointed with the results. I did not personally vote for Donald Trump. I did personally vote for Hillary Clinton. She was not my personal candidate I would have liked to vote it for, but she was the one who was most closely in line with issues that I felt were important for the vast majority of the country. So I was a little disappointed. I got up Wednesday morning. I went into my classroom to teach my morning ESL class, and we discussed, I listened to, their hurt and their frustration and their uncertainty of what's going to happen because they're refugees. So they're uncertain if they're going to be able to stay in this country. And I realized said, I have a lot of work to do. I have a lot of work to teach people how to mentally detox, to not let situations like this have such an impact on their lives that it starts to take that from an emotional toll to a physical toll on their life. And so I know that this election may not be a good thing for a lot of people, but for me, it is something that I feel has brought me to this point where over this last year, a lot of you have noticed that I'm transitioning from business development to mental detox. Now I understand why God brought me through this transition over the last year. He was preparing me to help a lot of you get through the next 4 years. And let's just be honest, in the next 4 years, I hope that we have a new president. And in the next 2 years, I hope Texas has a new governor. So I will be part of the effort to make sure that Governor Abbott is not reelected. I will do everything I can to support a qualified candidate to replace Governor Abbott. As far as the mayor of Houston, I think Mayor Turner is doing a very good job from everything I'm seeing. So I have no problems with him. I did vote for Mayor Turner, and I am pleased that, he's going above and beyond what any mayor probably would do in a situation like this, running a big city like Houston. So I said all this to say I'm going to continue to provide this service of mental detox to everyone who wants to learn how to get through the next 4 years under this new presumptive president. And I say presumptive because there's a lot of issues that still are lingering on whether this man, will be sworn in on January 20th. So we shall see if that happens. Okay, so I'm going to take a quick break, and then I am going to return with, what I'm seeing from the aftermath of this. I'm now accepting clients for my mental detox strategy sessions. I specialize in teaching overwhelmed entrepreneurs and professionals who give too much to others and nothing to themselves how to incorporate daily mental breaks into their schedule. Also, for those who are going through an emotional time right now because of the election, and you want to figure out how to get through it, you want to create a process to get through this time so that your mind is clear and focused so you can be part of the solution, please go to my site, VernettaRFraney.com/truthconfidant. Thanks for your support. Okay, so let's talk about the aftermath of the election. I talked about it a little before break, but I'm going to talk about the aftermath and, just what I see for Black entrepreneurs. Okay, so this is what I see. I see a lot of people throwing out anger and frustration, a lot of people, he's not my president, a lot of people who are more pro-Trump, who are saying a lot of hurtful, nasty, hateful, vile, evil things. All of this is just creating a world of chaos. And we cannot function in chaos. So personally, I feel that as entrepreneurs, specifically Black entrepreneurs, we have to become more visible in our communities. We have to showcase our products, our services, our events, whatever it is we're doing to the community. Why? Because Black companies, Black businesses actually employ more African Americans. So if we become more visible and we provide, exceptional service, then we are going to create more jobs in the community. That is the solution that a lot of people have been looking for. They want jobs. They want to provide for their families. So as entrepreneurs, as small business owners, we have to become more visible so that people know our business exists. We start adding revenue, and we can start hiring people so that we can start providing jobs in the community. That's one way we can take what's happened after this election and turn it into a positive. Another thing that people can do is support small businesses that are owned by minorities. With that money, there will be more money given to nonprofits and charitable organizations within the community, or, little league teams, or like in Houston, there's a TLC show coming up about this twirling team, baton twirlers, and they need $18,000 to compete in their, I guess it's a sport. If a small business owner, if a black small business owner had that money, they would be able to sponsor those girls so that they can continue to compete and have something positive to look forward to after school here in the Sunnyside community of Houston. So if you are a consumer, think about it, especially with Black Friday coming up, Small Biz Saturday, Cyber Monday, Giving Tuesday. Look at supporting a small business owner. Look at buying a product or a service from a small business owner, primarily an African American one, so that we can then recycle those dollars in our community. That's the second thing we can do. The third thing we can do is become more involved in our local elections. Know who our elected officials are on the local and state level. There are a lot of people who are elected officials who have been there 20 years and haven't really done much other than line their pockets, okay? And the only reason they continue to be elected is because people don't vote in local and state elections. People know their names, so they just check them off. You don't take the time to actually look at their track record to see if they're actually doing a good job for the community they are supposed to represent. That is the third thing we can do. Now, I looked at NPR's article on what Trump said his first 100 days were going to be. There's a lot of things in there, and since that article, there have been some flip-flopping on the Obamacare and the wall and the immigration stance. There were two things that I want to address that I did agree with. I agree with Congress should have term limits. No one should get to die as a House of Representative or a senator. I'm sorry, you should not. This is an elected position. Okay, this is not a private company. You need to work for X amount of years and then move and let someone else come in. So I definitely agree with that. Another thing that was mentioned was more funding for HBCUs, which are historically black colleges and universities. I really feel that a lot of administrations have neglected them. As much as President Obama has tried to do, it's not enough to keep them financially secure, financially healthy. And, Houston has two HBCUs per se. Prairie View is maybe, and a little outside of 45 minutes from Houston, and then Texas Southern University. Where I grew up, White House, Texas, in Tyler, we had Texas College. But, in Marshall, there was Wiley College. In Dallas, they have Paul Quinn College. I'm trying to think of some others in East Texas. They're Houston, Tillerson, and Austin. There's quite a few historically black colleges and universities here in the state of Texas alone. And I remember growing up in Texas College, which is the HBCU in Tyler, Texas, losing its accreditation. I remember people saying how horrible that college was and why they would never send their kids there. And one of my mom's best friends graduated from Texas College. I have a cousin who played basketball at Texas College. The problem was they did not have enough funding to do the things that they needed to get done to provide the education that they had been providing for decades. And so I really do hope that HBCUs will get the funding that they deserve in the next administration. We shall see. We shall see. But to kind of wrap up, because I don't want this to be a diatribe of, anger, frustration. I really want you guys to come up with solutions. I gave some solutions about Black-owned businesses being more visible so people know we exist, for you to support Black-owned businesses, for you to get involved in your local and state elections so you know who's running what and who's doing things. For those who are all in the hashtags, I wrote a whole post on 10 things you can do beyond the hashtag. I will link it up in the show notes for this particular episode so you can read that so that you can be part of the solution. I want everyone to kind of, take a deep breath, because this is only Sunday. This is Sunday, November 13th. So this is not even a full week after the election. Take a deep breath. It's okay to feel what you are feeling. And no one can tell you how long you're going to be upset. No one can tell you how long you're going to be sad. No one is going to tell you how long you're going to be heartbroken. That's you. That's something you will have to figure out. But I want you to understand that you can take those negative emotions and you can turn them into fuel to help be part of the solution. I watched this documentary on Netflix. It was about Ukraine, and it was about them protesting their president. And for 91 days, they protested until he resigned, and then he fled to Russia. I think it was called Winter and Fire or something like that. It's on Netflix. I will try to look it up while I'm on this podcast with you guys. But essentially, 91 days, these students, these young people in Ukraine stood out in the winter, stood out in the cold, and they protested, and they, had retired military teach them how to protect themselves from the police. Yes, it's called Winter on Fire, Ukraine's Fight for Freedom. Okay, that's the documentary. So for all these people who are protesting the election results, you have every right to protest, but become organized. Have a plan. Have something you want the current or the next administration to really consider. Don't just go out there screaming and crying, but go out there with a plan to make a change for whatever your cause is, whatever you're protesting. Well, that's all I have for, this episode. I am going to end with my final takeaway. Okay, so my final takeaway from everything that's happened is this. Don't put all of your emotions into one person's election. Do not put all of your hopes and dreams into someone else. Use someone else's campaign or election as motivation for you to be the architect of your destiny. Well, that's all I have for this episode of A Toast to Truth. This has been A Toast to Truth with me, Vernetta Arfreni, letting you know how I feel about the 2016 election aftermath, especially for Black entrepreneurs. All right, I will see you next week for a more positive, hopefully a more positive episode.